frost and fortune. The Artemis hung in the void, its engines cooling as Captain Tavia Reed stared through the viewport at the derelict station. Helios 9 had been presumed destroyed during the Cygnus conflict, yet here it was, a ghost ship drifting at the edge of chartered space. Initial scans complete, Moss, her ship's AI, reported. Temperature readings at -87 Celsius. Oxygen levels critical. Recommendation, ignore and continue to the Perseid belt. Tavia tapped her fingers against the worn leather of her captain's chair. One good salvage could clear her debt to the syndicate. One good salvage could give her back her life. Prepare the thermal suit, she said, already reaching for her gear, and keep the engines warm. Captain, station integrity is questionable at best, Moss protested. The probability of valuable salvage is the probability that I'll be spaced. By the syndicate is 100% if I don't pay them by the end of the month, Tavia cut in. Sometimes you have to risk the void to escape it, Moss. The docking sequence was nerve-wracking, manual override required, with Tavia guiding the Artemis to latch onto an external airlock. The station's own systems had died long ago. Inside, the air was so cold it burned in her lungs, despite the thermal suit. Ice crystals formed around her breath filter, and the flashlight on her helmet cast long shadows through corridors that hadn't seen human presence in generations. "What was this place, Moss?" she whispered, voice echoing through her comms. Helios 9 was designated as a diplomatic outpost during the Alliance expansion. Records indicate it went dark in 2389, during peace negotiations with the very delegation. Tavia paused, her gloved hand brushing frost from a panel. The very? I thought they were a myth. The very civilization was confirmed extinct 47 years after contact. Their biological engineering capabilities were unmatched in known space. A chill that had nothing to do with the temperature crawled up Tavia's spine. The very were legends now, beings who had evolved beyond physical form, or so the stories said. Worth investigating, if only for the historical value. She found it in what must have been the station's central chamber, a crystalline structure, almost like a coffin, embedded in a platform of unfamiliar design. Frost covered its surface, but something inside caught her light, reflecting it back in prismatic patterns. "Moss, are you seeing this?" she breathed, approaching slowly. Caution advised, "Captain, unknown technology." Tavia wiped away a section of frost with her glove. Through the translucent material, she saw a face, delicate features, skin the color of deep ocean, marked with luminescent patterns that pulsed faintly. Not human, beautiful. And the eyes, they opened. Pale silver eyes stared back at Tavia, alert and terrified. "Moss," she whispered, "she's alive!" The crystalline case began to crack, hairline fractures spreading across its surface. The station around them groaned, a deep mechanical protest as ancient systems strained. Warning lights Tavia hadn't noticed before flickered weakly to life, bathing the room in crimson. "Captain, station power reserves are failing," Moss warned. "Temperature dropping rapidly. Return to the ship immediately." But Tavia couldn't move. The silver eyes held her, pleading. "No," she said firmly. "Prep the medical bay. We're bringing her home." Thaw. The crystal shattered beneath Tavia's plasma cutter, exploding into 1,000 glittering fragments. Alarms wailed throughout the station as life support systems, awakened after centuries of dormancy, began their final death throes. "Captain, you have approximately 18 minutes before station integrity fails completely," Moss's voice crackled through her comms. "Temperature now at -93 Celsius and dropping." The being inside the pod didn't move as the protective shell fell away. Her skin, a deep cerulean marked with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed weakly, was rigid with frost. Only her eyes showed life, tracking Tavia's movements with desperate awareness. "Can you understand me?" Tavia asked, already working to free the alien from the restraints that had held her immobile for centuries. No response came except a slight flicker in those silver eyes. Tavia made a decision. She detached her suit's external power cell and connected it to the alien's stasis platform. The effect was immediate. Warmth began to flow through the ancient technology, and the being's body shuddered. "This will drain my suit's reserves," Tavia muttered, more to herself than to Moss. "We'll have one shot to get back to the Artemis." A sound, like crystal chimes in wind, emanated from the alien as her limbs began to thaw. Her mouth moved, forming sounds Tavia couldn't begin to comprehend. "Moss, any chance you can translate?" Insufficient data. The very language was never fully documented before their extinction. The alien woman reached out with trembling fingers, touching Tavia's helmet. The gesture was unmistakable. A plea. "I'm getting you out of here," Tavia promised, though she knew her words weren't understood. She unclipped her emergency thermal blanket and wrapped it around the alien's slender form. "My name is Tavia. Tavia Reed." The alien's lips moved again, this time more deliberately. "Nishala," she said, the sound like water over stones. The station shuddered violently. Overhead, metal screamed as support beams, brittle from centuries of cold, began to crack. "We need to move. Now." Tavia helped Nishala to her feet, but the alien's legs gave way immediately. Centuries in stasis had left her muscles atrophied. Without hesitation, Tavia lifted her, surprisingly light despite her height, and started toward the airlock. The journey back was a nightmare. Tavia's suit temperature dropped steadily as the power cell drained. Her breath fogged her helmet, and her extremities began to lose feeling. Nishala clung to her, the alien's body temperature rising slowly but still dangerously cold. "Moss, open the airlock," Tavia gasped as they reached the connection point. "And crank the heat in the med bay. Captain, your vital signs are approaching. Critical levels. Just do it." The airlock cycled painfully slowly. As they stumbled into the Artemis, Tavia's legs finally gave way. They collapsed together on the deck, Tavia fumbling with frozen fingers to remove her helmet. Nishala watched her with those silver eyes, then reached out to help, her own fingers now more dexterous as circulation returned. As the helmet came, "Free!" Tavia gulped in the warm air of her ship. "Detach from the station immediately," she ordered Moss between ragged breaths. "Maximum safe distance." Through the viewport, they watched as Helios 9 began to break apart, debris spinning silently into the void. Nishala made a sound, not quite a sob, not quite a sigh, as the last physical connection to her past disintegrated. In the artificial gravity of the Artemis, Nishala struggled to stand. Tavia helped her to the medical bay, where the ship's limited diagnostic equipment beeped in confusion at the alien physiology. "Moss," Tavia asked quietly, watching as Nishala examined her surroundings with wary curiosity. "What have I done?" "You have recovered a living Very ambassador, Captain," Moss replied. "The implications are incalculable." Nishala turned at, the sound of Moss's voice, her head tilted in concentration. Then she spoke, a complex string of musical syllables, and to Tavia's shock, Moss responded with similar sounds. "What was that?" Tavia demanded. "I believe," Moss said, "she is trying to learn our language." "Borrowed light." "Your ship." Nishala's voice was hesitant, each word carefully formed as she pointed to the control panels of the Artemis. "It speaks with consciousness." 3 days had passed since their escape from Helios 9. 3 days of cautious communication built on Moss's remarkable ability to adapt to the linguistic patterns of the very language. 3 days of waiting while the Artemis's engines underwent critical repairs after the strain of their hasty departure. "Moss is an artificial intelligence," Tavia explained, watching Nishala's face for comprehension. "Not alive exactly, but Aware. Nishala nodded slowly. The luminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsed thoughtfully, a biological tell that Tavia had begun to recognize as emotional processing. We had similar companions, she replied, though ours were grown, not built. They sat in the Artemis's small galley, sharing a meal of synthesized protein that Nishala approached with scientific curiosity rather than appetite. Her metabolism, adapted for long periods of dormancy, required little sustenance. "How long were you in that pod?" Tavia asked, the question that had haunted her since their escape. Nishala's silver eyes clouded. "Moss has explained your time measurements. By your reckoning, 342 of your years." Tavia nearly choked on her drink. "And you were conscious? The whole time?" "Not as you understand consciousness. The stasis slowed my thoughts, my awareness, but did not eliminate them." Her long fingers traced patterns on the table's surface. "I perceived time differently. Moments stretched into eternities. I watched stars die through the station viewport." "The pod was malfunctioning," Tavia said softly. "You were supposed to be fully suspended." "Yes." The word hung between them, heavy with unspoken suffering. "Helios 9 was a diplomatic station," Tavia prompted gently. "You were there as an ambassador?" Nishala's luminescent patterns flared briefly, a reaction Tavia now recognized as emotional distress. "I was sent to negotiate peace between your people and mine. The very were dying. Our biological engineering had reached its limits. We had reshaped ourselves too many times, and our genetic code was becoming unstable." "You needed human help?" "We needed genetic diversity." Nishala's gaze was direct now, unflinching. "I was created specifically for the mission, designed to be compatible with human biology, to communicate with human minds. I was to be the bridge between our species." Understanding dawned on Tavia. Someone didn't want that alliance to happen. "There were factions among both our peoples who feared such blending," Nishala confirmed. "The station was attacked during negotiations. I was placed in stasis by my aide, Jevran. He promised to return with help." Her voice faltered. "He never did." "And your people?" "Moss has shown me your historical records. The very extinction was completed within 50 years of my abandonment. I am the last." The silence that followed was profound. Tavia reached across the table, a gesture of comfort, and after a moment's hesitation, Nishala placed her hand in Tavia's. Her skin was cool to the touch, slightly textured like fine silk. "Captain," Moss interrupted, "engine repairs are complete. But I'm detecting an approaching vessel. Syndicate markings," Tavia cursed under her breath. "How did they find us?" "Unknown. However, their trajectory suggests they are aware of our presence." Nishala withdrew her hand, her expression questioning. "The Syndicate," Tavia explained grimly, "is a corporate entity that owns my debt and will be very interested in who we found on Helios 9. They would claim me as property?" Understanding flashed in Nishala's eyes. "As my people once claimed yours?" Tavia blinked in surprise. "What? Before the peace negotiations, humans were considered specimens by some very scientists. It was this practice I was sent to end." Nishala's patterns pulsed with what Tavia now recognized as shame. "History repeats its cruelties, it seems." Tavia stood abruptly, her mind racing. "Not this time," she declared. "Moss, plot an escape vector through the Kerr Nebula. We're not letting the Syndicate get their hands on her." "The nebula will damage our sensors, Captain. Navigation will be compromised." "Good. Theirs will be too." Tavia turned to Nishala. "I need to know, can you help me pilot this ship? The neural interfaces were designed for human brains, but if you were engineered to be compatible..." Nishala rose, her full height, nearly 7 feet, imposing yet graceful. I was created to bridge our worlds, Captain Reed. It would be my honor to try. The approaching storm. Syndicate vessel. Harrow requesting communication, Captain Reed, Moss announced as the sleek corporate ship closed the distance. They are aware of our salvage operation and claim prior rights to Helios 9 and all associated materials. Tavia's hands gripped the pilot's controls, knuckles white. Beside her, Nishala sat in the co-pilot's chair, neural interface cables connected to the ports at her temples. The alien's eyes were closed, her luminescent patterns pulsing in rhythm with the Artemis's systems. "Tell them to go to hell," Tavia muttered. "I would advise against that specific phrasing," Moss replied, a hint of dry humor in its synthetic voice. "Fine. Open channel." Tavia straightened in her seat. "This is Captain Reed. Helios 9 has been destroyed. There's nothing left to salvage." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sharp-featured woman in a pristine syndicate uniform. "Captain Reed, I am Director Wynn of the Harrow. Our scans indicate you departed the station with biological cargo. According to your contract, all discoveries made while under syndicate debt belong to the corporation." Tavia felt ice form in her stomach. "I recovered no cargo, Director." Wynn's thin smile didn't reach her eyes. "Our scans say otherwise. The syndicate has been monitoring Helios 9 for decades. We are well aware of its significance and the specimen it contained." Beside Tavia, Nishala's eyes opened. "She is lying," she whispered, low enough that the comms wouldn't pick it up. "The syndicate only detected the station when we activated its systems." Tavia nodded slightly, understanding the implications. The syndicate had been tracking the Artemis, not Helios 9. Her debt had made her a marked woman. "Director," Tavia said carefully, "I found nothing of value. The station was empty. Then you won't mind if we board and verify that claim." Wynn's tone made it clear this wasn't a request. "Prepare for docking in 15 minutes, or we will consider you in breach of contract and respond accordingly." The communication cut off. Tavia slammed her fist against the console. "They'll take the ship," she said bitterly. "They'll take you." Nishala's expression remained serene, though her bioluminescent patterns flashed with rapid pulses. "The neural interface has given me access to your ship's full capabilities," she said quietly, "including systems you were unaware of." Tavia stared at her. "What do you mean?" "Your ship was once a military vessel before it was repurposed for civilian use." Nishala's silver eyes met Tavia's. "The weapon systems were disabled but not removed." "Moss?" Tavia demanded. "Is this true?" "The Artemis was indeed a frontier defense scout ship before being decommissioned and sold to the private sector," Moss confirmed. "Ambassador Nishala has accessed archived schematics I was programmed to ignore." Tavia shook her head in disbelief. "You're suggesting we fight a syndicate enforcement vessel? That's suicide." "No," Nishala corrected. "I am suggesting we use their expectations against them. They believe I am cargo, a specimen. They do not know what I am capable of." She disconnected from the neural interface, silver eyes now glowing with an inner light. "My people were not warriors, Captain Reed, but we were survivors. We engineered ourselves for harsh environments, for communication across species barriers, and for defense when necessary." Tavia watched as Nishala's skin began to change, the luminescent patterns growing brighter, spreading. "What are you doing?" "Creating a distraction." Nishala's voice had taken on a harmonic quality, resonating at multiple frequencies simultaneously. "When they board, I will interface directly with their ship's systems, the very developed protocols that could communicate with any computational system, organic or mechanical." "You're going to hack their ship?" Tavia asked incredulously. "I am going to persuade it," Nishala corrected. "While I do, you must reactivate the Artemis's defensive capabilities." Tavia hesitated only a moment before nodding. Moss, bring up those archived schematics. Let's see what this old scout ship can still do. The next 15 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Tavia worked feverishly beneath the main console, rerouting power conduits while Nishala guided her through the process. The alien's knowledge of both Veri and human technology created bridges where Tavia saw only gaps. "Harrow initiating docking sequence," Moss announced. "Shall I comply?" Tavia emerged from beneath the console, hands smudged with grease, a determined set to her jaw. "Let them think they've won. For now." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that reverberated through the Artemis. Tavia took her position by the airlock, a salvaged pulse pistol concealed at her side. Nishala stood in plain sight, her luminescence now subdued, appearing more vulnerable than she had since her rescue. "Remember," Nishala said softly. "Director, Wynn must physically board the ship for my plan to work." Tavia nodded grimly. "And if it doesn't?" Nishala's patterns pulsed once, brightly. "Then we face the void together, Captain Reed." The airlock cycled open. Director Wynn stepped through first, flanked by 2 armed syndicate security officers. Her cold gaze moved from Tavia to Nishala, and a smile of triumph spread across her face. "Captain Reed," she said, "I believe you've been holding out on us." "Between worlds extraordinary," Director Wynn breathed, eyes fixed on Nishala. "A living Veri specimen. Do you understand what this is worth, Captain Reed? The bioengineering secrets alone could pay your debt 1,000 times over." Tavia stepped, protectively closer to Nishala. "She's not a specimen. She's an ambassador." Wynn laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "Ambassadors require nations, Captain. The Veri are extinct. This is the last of its kind, a scientific curiosity, nothing." "More, her kind," Tavia corrected firmly. "And she has a name." Nishala stood perfectly still, her luminescent patterns dimmed to almost nothing. To Wynn, she must have appeared docile, perhaps even simple. Only Tavia noticed the subtle change in the quality of light around them as Nishala began to interface with the ship's systems. "The Syndicate will take custody of the specimen and your vessel," Wynn continued, gesturing to her guards. "Your debt will be considered paid in full, a generous offer considering your attempt at deception." "And if I refuse?" Tavia asked, buying time. Wynn's smile thinned. "Then we take the specimen and the ship, and you face charges of contract violation. The mining colonies always need more labor." The security officers moved forward. Tavia tensed, her hand inching toward the concealed pulse pistol. "That will not be necessary," Nishala said suddenly, her voice echoing with harmonics that seemed to vibrate through the metal of the ship itself. Wynn blinked, clearly surprised to hear the alien speak. "It can communicate?" "I have been communicating," Nishala replied, her patterns beginning to glow brighter, "for a very long time. With stars, with void, with machines that remember what humans forget." The lights in the Artemis flickered, then stabilized at a higher intensity. Through the viewport, Tavia could see the same happening aboard the Harrow. Wynn's comms unit erupted with panicked voices. "What's happening?" the director demanded, her composure cracking. "Your ship recognizes me," Nishala explained calmly. "All machines carry echoes of their creators. The Syndicate built upon technology that once spoke with the Veri. I have reminded it of older conversations." Wynn's hand moved to her sidearm. "Stop whatever you're doing, now!" "Director," one of the security officers interrupted, his voice strained. "The Harrow systems are cycling through emergency protocols. Life support is fluctuating." Tavia seized her moment. "Here's my counteroffer. Director, you return to your ship, alone, and leave us in peace. In exchange, Nishala restores your systems." "This is piracy," Wynn hissed. "This is diplomacy," Nishala corrected. "Something my people once hoped to teach yours." For a tense moment, Tavia thought Wynne might order her guards to attack. Instead, the director's cold calculation visibly reasserted itself. "You won't get far," she said finally. "Every syndicate vessel in the sector will hunt you down." "Perhaps," Tavia agreed. "But they'll have to find us first." With a curt nod to her guards, Wynne retreated through the airlock. The moment it sealed behind them, Tavia rushed to the controls. "Moss, disengage docking clamps. Full power to engines." "The Harrow's weapon systems are powering up," Moss warned. Nishala placed her hands flat against the ship's bulkhead, her entire body now glowing with intense light. "They will not fire," she said with quiet certainty. True to her word, as the Artemis pulled away, the Harrow remained dormant, its systems locked in a cycle of conflicting commands. "The nebula?" Tavia asked, plotting their escape route. "No," Nishala replied, her glow subsiding as she released her connection to the ships. "I have a better destination." She moved to the navigation console, her long fingers dancing across the controls. A set of coordinates appeared, far beyond the boundaries of charted space. "What's out there?" Tavia asked. "Hope," Nishala said simply. "Before the very began to fade, we sent seeds to the stars, genetic archives, placed in systems where life might one day flourish. I know where they are." Tavia studied the alien woman who had become, in mere days, more than a rescue, more than a companion. "You want to rebuild your people?" Not as they were. Nishala's silver eyes held Tavia's gaze. "But as they could be. With help." The implication hung between them, enormous in its significance. Tavia looked away first, her gaze sweeping over the Artemis's cramped cabin, her home, her prison, her only constant for years of lonely salvage runs. "I'm a scavenger with a price on my head," she said quietly. "Not exactly the ideal partner for restarting a civilization." Nishala moved closer, her cool hand coming to rest on Tavia's shoulder. "You are the human who looked at a frozen alien and saw a person worth saving. That is exactly who I need." The Artemis hummed around them as it accelerated away from the Harrow, from the Syndicate, from everything Tavia had known. Ahead lay uncharted space and uncertainties too vast to comprehend. "This is crazy," Tavia murmured, even as her hands set the course Nishala had plotted. "Yes," Nishala agreed, her patterns pulsing with what Tavia now recognized as joy. "Life usually is." In the viewport, stars streaked past as the Artemis leapt into faster-than-light travel. Tavia felt Nishala's hand find hers, cool fingers, intertwining with warm ones, a bridge between worlds, between pasts, between possibilities. "Captain," Moss interrupted, "the Syndicate will be tracking our energy signature." "Then let's give them something unexpected to track," Tavia replied, a smile forming on her lips. She turned to Nishala. "How do you feel about becoming pirates?" Nishala's laugh was like crystal chimes in solar wind. "I believe the term is freedom fighters," she corrected, "and I have been waiting to fight for freedom for 342 years. As the Artemis carried them toward the unknown, Tavia realized she was no longer running from her past, but toward a future, one that spanned galaxies and centuries, one that had begun the moment she found a frost-covered pod and made the choice to see what was inside. Some treasures, it seemed, were never meant to be salvaged. Some were meant to be saved.